5 items on the consent calendar, and I think there are also a couple of items that we will be discussing. So with that, Madam CLA, why don't you read item 1?
Communication from the mayor relative to withdrawing his appointment of Mr. Christopher D. Lee to the Industrial Development Authority Board of Commissioners for the term ending June 30th, 2012.
Okay, on item 1, we will receive and file the mayor's communication. We do have a quorum, Mr. City Attorney. I'm joined by Mr. Reyes and Mr. Alarcon. Could you please read item 2?
CRA and CLA reports relative to repealing the CRA policy on Central Business District transfer of floor area ratio as superseded by city ordinance.
Okay, on item 2, we will adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 3.
CDD and CAO reports relative to executing a $7 million loan agreement with Wilshire Catalina Gateway LLC to provide funding assistance for the development of the Wilshire Catalina Gateway project.
Okay, on that item, we'll adopt the CAO report. Brings us to item 4.
CRA report and resolution relative to the transfer of $300,000 to the Los Angeles Department of Transportation for the installation of traffic signals at Finley and Hillhurst Avenues.
Okay, on that item, we'll receive and file the CRA report. Item 8, we will continue. And that will bring us to item 5. In fact, I think we can discuss items 5, 6, and 7 together.
CLA report relative to using UDAG funds to assist certified farmers markets in the payment of city permit fees and associated staff costs as initiated by motion Weezer Koretz-Hahn. Item 6, motion Koretz-Labange relative to allocating $65,000 in UDAG funds to assist the National Council of Jewish Women in order to upgrade security measures at their Fairfax site. Item 7, motion Smith-Perry relative to allocating $100,000 in UDAG funds to assist the Devonshire Division Police Activity League supporters, PALS, for 1 year.
Okay, so we've got, before we start, I have a couple of, you didn't need to fill out a card, but I do have a couple of cards, so I want to bring up Joyce Chan. And please come forward. You guys stay. You don't have to. No, come and sit. Please come in and sit. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. I am here to talk about the farmers markets in the city of Los Angeles. And I think there's a perception that farmers markets are a luxury for people who can afford luxuries, and I just want to say how very necessary they are to the city of Los Angeles. The obvious aspect is the nutrition. There's a high rate of obesity in Los Angeles and diabetes, and we sell real food to combat those health problems. We don't sell edible food like substances. We sell carrots and, fruits and vegetables. The other aspect is that it's really helpful to the small farms of California. I don't think that a lot of them would be around right now if it weren't for the farmers markets in Los Angeles. We're their sole support. We're their way of feeding their families. And there's a big job creation benefit with farmers markets. And I don't think that a lot of people realize that. I think when you go to a farmers market, it seems very happy and maybe even luxurious, but I think that's just the farmers market manager doing a good job, because we create CLA. I'm from Sustainable Economic Enterprises of Los Angeles. The jobs that we've created, just our 7 farmers markets thus far, it's been around 530 jobs. We give the opportunity to the person who wants to start a business to start a business with very little overhead. So we charge 10% of their gross sales. They don't need too much of a business loan. They can go in and start their business. An example of that is the barbecue person that started at our Watts Farmers Market. He then came to the Atwater Farmers Market and then got written up in the LA Weekly by Jonathan Gold. And now
I feel
he's able to
sorry
quit
for
his
him.
job. Pardon me?
Let me ask you a quick question. I thought I heard you say you see LA at 7 farmer markets.
Well, we're about to have 8, but
Okay, so where are they located?
South Central, Watts, Echo Park, Hollywood, Atwater Village. We're going to open one in Canoga Park, and when can I think of the other one? I'm drawing a blank. Oh, East Hollywood.
So you have one in Hollywood, East Hollywood, Watts, Canoga Park, and I forgot the other ones.
Echo Park.
Echo Park? Atwater Village. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Paul, you want to come back? Are we gonna, thank you.
Oh, go sit.
Yes. You'll get used to it. You keep coming down, you'll be a pro. Now, do you guys want to give a presentation, or you just want to do questions and answers? Commissioner, what do you want to?
Thank you. I just want to make a couple of comments, and thank you.
Go right
for letting me
ahead.
Speak. Paula Daniels, a Public Works Commissioner. So I come here actually in 2 capacities. I'm on the Board of Public Works, but I'm also co-chair of a food policy task force, which was created last fall. And I want to speak in part in that capacity. But we do have here with me Julia Leary from the Community Development Department that's going to speak about some analysis we did.
She's my elevator. We ride share.
Yeah. It's a good place to do business. And I also have some gentlemen from the Bureau of Street Services here to answer any questions you might have about implementing this proposal. But I speak here in favor of a proposal to use some identified UDAG funds to help provide a transitional buffer for farmers markets during this initial 2-year implementation of the special events ordinance. I want to start by commending the CLA's office for the work they've done, and the council for the work you've done in the past few years in looking
In that order?
You know what? I think I woke up with dyslexia this morning, so let me start again. I want to start by thanking the council and the CLA's office, and I do mean that sincerely, because you all have worked quite a bit over the past few years in trying to sort out what to do with farmers markets as you work through the special events ordinance. And some really good work has been done along those lines. The CLA's office held a number of meetings, and I want to commend their work and the work of the departments for looking at how to reduce and annualize the fees to the market. So they're now at a reasonably manageable level. But there's still a fair amount of impact that could occur to farmers markets from the fees that will be implemented soon, and we're not certain entirely yet how it's going to play out. We do have good estimates, and I'm very confident in the estimates of our departments, but we still haven't implemented it yet. So the idea is that we can provide a buffer for the first 2 years of implementation, particularly for those farmers markets that serve low-income communities through either their location and service area, which we'll explain in a second, or the fact that they use food stamps, EBT machines, electronic benefit transfer machines. So I do want to say how important it is, and I know you all recognize this because of the work you've done, to support farmers markets in any region. I'm very proud to be co-chair of this food policy task force. We're looking at the possibility of creating a food policy council. We'll be bringing those recommendations to the mayor and to the council in June. I think you also got a report yesterday from the CLA's office about food policy work being done in the city, and they did recommend that we bring those ideas forward. And in food policy councils around North America, and they are popping up around North America, in Toronto, in Detroit, in San Francisco, in New York, in Seattle, in Boston, and Portland, any food policy worth its salt, so to speak, has a strong support of farmers markets. And the ideas that are emerging, we don't have a report yet, but the ideas that are emerging in this food policy task force do include support for farmers markets, and the idea of subsidizing their fees. We also have a report from Urban Rural Roundtable that also makes those same recommendations, particularly for those farmers markets that serve low-income communities. The reasons are obvious. I think you know them. They're a very important way to provide fresh food to low-income communities when they're located in those regions in particular. But they also, it's not an insignificant thing that they provide economic support to the nearby small and mid-sized farmers. LA was once the largest agricultural county in this country. We're now 27th in the state. We really do have the opportunity, though, and you'll see these recommendations soon, to support that regional food economy, and it's an important part of keeping fresh food coming into the urban areas of Los Angeles. So I know that you're going to be grappling with this issue, and you have these two other items on your agenda today about how to best use these UDAG funds. But I would argue, because of the real importance of supporting farmers markets and the importance of having a really strong and forward-leaning food policy in this city, that this is probably one of the best uses of it. We've looked at, we're aware of 24 farmers markets that are on streets in the Los Angeles city area. There's more than that in the city, but 24 that are on streets requiring permits. And of those, this Community Development Department has identified 11 that are in service areas for low and moderate income communities, and we know of 2 that use electronic benefit transfer machines. So our proposal is that for those 13, the $75,000 be used to provide their fees, their permit fees for the first 2 years, including any one-time expenses related to signage for the Department of Transportation.
So you're talking about the 11 plus the 2 that use the
EBT machine.
and then the other 11 are on their own?
On their own.
So,
And the idea is that these are small markets that are nonprofits. So any amount, so we're really appreciative of and I do mean it's the good work of the CLA's office in getting the fees to a point where they're probably about $1,500 a year. That's tremendous.
well, I don't
It still
think,
can mean a lot to a small farmers market.
I don't think there's a member on this committee that doesn't realize in our districts the difficulty in obtaining fresh vegetables and fruits and things of that nature. In fact, not too long ago, I was in Mr. Weezar's district. I can't remember the name of Andrew, what was the name of the housing complex? Ramona Gardens, where we had I don't know if you remember it, we had a young lady was here, and I promised to take her shopping. But I had to go out to Ramona Gardens, and I saw where the majority of the local people shopped, and it was one of these little markets where the prices are ridiculous. We all know about markets like that. The produce was pretty, I mean, it was edible, but it was pretty terrible. So naturally, we all have concerns and understand the needs. A farmer's market was just started this past Sunday at a church on the corner of my street. So, my wife and I had an opportunity to go and buy some bananas and strawberries and fresh corn, and there were people all over, that were there from the entire community. So it's a fun atmosphere, number one. It's a healthy atmosphere. However, we are going through serious financial situation right now. I don't have to tell you. So my main concern was that we assisted these farmer markets that were in the low to moderate income areas, because that's where you have a huge need. And another thing, in our areas, it seems like our markets are the last stop when they drop the produce off. And, and I'll be honest, even, and I'm proud of the community where I live, but I will drive an additional 12 minutes to, I think it's Mr. Labange's district, to La Brea and 3rd to that Ralph's, because it's better than the Ralph's that I have right around the corner from my house. And so I am very supportive of anything that will give our people an opportunity to buy fresh vegetables. I think Mr. Reyes and then Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Reyes?
Thank you. These food deserts, that's what people are calling it. Areas like ours that were relegated to using warehouses and high-priced small markets. So I see the great value in the farmers markets. So we have one in Highland Park, one's identified in the report. There really is all the reasons for me to just kind of say, yes, this is a great idea. But I wanted to raise this question to my colleagues, and it really is about the use of UDAG. And again, it's not to take away from the significance of what you're trying to get done. I believe in it. We need it. The whole issue of diet is very real to me on a personal level. I have a son with diabetes, as well as what it does for obesity and all the issues that hit our children. But this is more of a principal question. I wanted to pose this to the committee. UDAG is one of the last pots of funds that gives us the flexibility to do what we can in a whole range of issues and concerns in our respective districts. And just on the face of it, just on looking at it from its face value in terms of what this is doing, we're using UDAG funds to pay for permits. And so with a city as big as ours, with many different avenues and or perhaps approaches, is there any other way to really take care of what little UDAG we have for other concerns? Is there any other way, and I'll address the CLA, to offset these permits without using UDAG so that we can make it accessible to like child care, senior care, and there's other things that we need, job training. So I just want to pose a question before we move forward, because I do believe in these. There's one on Marmion Way, the community's been behind it. I want to support it. But I think this is like a policy issue, and I just want to put this on the floor and get some feedback. Is there any other way of paying for permits where we don't have to go after or use UDAG in this way?
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Paul Smith, CLA. Members, as you recall, the council adopted back in the October and late fall a special events permit and subsidy ordinance. That ordinance provides up to 100% subsidy to farmers markets for the exact same costs that are called out in the motion. It's for the permits and the staff costs associated with utilizing the city's right-of-way for farmers markets. These are farmers markets that have their location on the right-of-way. So you need a permitting process to utilize the streets for selling and for maybe even for larger tents and maybe even for structures that they put up. But we have a standard plan that's been adopted by the council, seriously considered, a lot of work put in by the departments, how to reduce those costs to the farmers markets. And we think we can do an annual permit in the range of $3,500 annually for a farmers market. Again, council already has adopted, and the mayor has approved a program of subsidies up to 100% of those costs.
Paul, let me interrupt you, because Mr. Reyes's question is, do we have other options?
You do.
And that's what I want to get at. Like, off the top of my head, I know that there's one in Mr. Reyes's district,
Right.
or one that I'm aware of. I can't think of the street. I think it's Adams. It's in a church parking lot.
Right.
Okay, the one that's in my district, or not the one that's in my district, but the new one that just started this weekend is in a church parking lot. Is it not? Now, what I think is that, what are we talking about? 75 grand, or how much money is this subsidy?
Right.
The subsidy that the council's already approved is 100% of whatever those city costs are.
And that estimation is
Right,
what?
about $3,500.
No, but total, the
Oh,
total,
total for
all of them.
all of them? Well, there's only 17 now, so 17 times 35, whatever that would be, is on a citywide basis.
Well, how do we offset the 75,000? In other words, how do we avoid using UDAG? Is there any other way of using other funds and/or policy
There's
that
two things.
that
One
keeps us from having to use UDAG? That's
Yeah,
my
you-
point.
One, and I think Paul and others have also recognized that remove them from the streets and to parking lots or others is
But that's almost impossible
for
for,
some.
like in Highland Park, that's impossible.
And secondly, you already have the capability to provide the farmers markets with a subsidy. They have to request it from you. It's 100% of whatever those permit costs are.
Where does our money come from to pay for that?
The council already provided that in an account in your council district. There's an account already established that is a process by which they make a request, the CLA reviews it, and the...
And does it cover the
clerk
75,000 gap? Does it cover the 75,000 that we're referring to?
I don't know where they got their $75,000, Councilman. I think it's just an amount that they thought was available that they could use for this purpose. What I'm trying to express is you already
Well,
have...
let me ask you this, Mr. Smith, because I don't want to take too much time on this, because I know we have council and other items. Mr. Chair, if we were to continue this for a week to let the CLA give us options, so we don't have to use UDAG, and that way we can support what is asked for,
So there's no action that's going to be taken today. It's a note and file. But I do think that we do have options here. Now, again, Mr. Smith, now what we've heard is that it's 75,000 for a 2-year period. So that's about 37,000 and change per year. I think we should have this discussion again, Mr. Reyes, because 35,000 is a lot, but it's not a lot. And I'll get right with you. And I think that, there are ways that there are possible options. Maybe what we do is we do a one-time, and then we look at the other options. One of the things that I was trying to get at when I was speaking with Mr. Smith, and we've just been joined by Mr. Cardenas, is that we should do a report or study or investigate the possibility of moving some of these, having them partner with churches, because that would reduce the cost. So maybe we should talk about it again, because they are I think they're very important. I support them, but I agree with you. This would appear to me to be something that we could get partners that would help us do this. So, Mr. Alacon, I'm going to get to you, but I think Mr. Reyes, are you?
Well, yeah, I'll wait.
Richard.
Actually, this is more or less a point of information. I thought we were considering 5, 6, and 7 at the
We're
same
going to
time.
get to those, yeah, but we're just talking
No, but I
about
thought
the one right now.
So we're talking about item 5, which is, because 6 and 7 are action items, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be clear on that. But, I have a interesting take on this. My mother retired from retail, grocery, the grocery retail industry, and I worked in the business, got me through college, for 5 years. And it's really interesting. My mother always used to say, it's really interesting. And by the way, she worked at the Boys on Crenshaw, and she worked at a Big Buy.
On Crenshaw Rodeo, which is now around.
And she also worked at Big Buy over in Boyle Heights. And of course, she spent most of her time in the San Fernando Valley in what is now Tony and my district. So, but she always used to say, it's really interesting, the Mexicans always buy the best quality fruit and vegetables. And she said no matter what else they had, they would always pile the food on and make sure that they bought the best quality. Interestingly, the San Fernando Valley was a farming community. Even in my lifetime, I remember growing up, believe it or not, in Sun Valley, and the property across the street was a turnip patch. And every year I would go taste them to see if they got any better, and they never got any better. And I remember the little farmer coming out and working the few acres that were across the street from my house. And so the San Fernando Valley is an interesting story, but we've lost pretty much all the agricultural, as Mr. Reyes well knows, and we've also lost touch with the acquiring direct food from the farms. Well, with the exception of the farmers markets we have on every off-ramp on the freeway system, but oranges and you name it, we get all kinds of stuff.
Peanuts.
Yeah. So I don't, my problem wasn't really using UDAG money for farmers markets per se. It was using UDAG money for farmers markets that are not in areas that are struggling. Now, even though the UDAG policies have been over time sort of washed away, and those policies were that we would use UDAG money for communities that were impoverished. Now, I don't remember ever making a specific change to that. It's sort of just whittled away, and there's money available, so let's use it for this or let's use it for that. But I don't remember ever changing the policy that UDAG money should be used in typically impoverished areas. So, and the irony of it is that I'm not opposed to farmers markets. I just want them to go where they're needed the most, which is in communities like Pacoima and even Van Nuys and North Hollywood, and those areas. So, particularly, and by the way, you mentioned obesity. The highest rate of obesity in the entire state of California is in my district. In the entire state of California, the 39th Assembly District has the highest rate of obesity. And the San Fernando Valley, the Senate District, is the second highest in the state. And I know because I've served in both positions. So that's where the quality food needs to go in terms of a direct market from the farms. The processed foods are what is creating the high rates of diabetes and limiting the selection of folks, and by using marketing devices, getting them to buy processed foods and a lot of sugar. So I'm all for farmers markets. I just think they need to go where they're needed the most, and particularly if they're funded by the government. I mean, if a community wants to put up a farmers market, great, put it up, and make money at it, do whatever. But if you want to use government money, you got to have a special need. And so Mr. Franks tells me that 11 of these projects are in low to moderate income service areas. I'm fine with the allocation for that as long as we adhere to the fundamental policy. But I also think that there are other needs that are not being met that this money could be directed for. And in my district, I'll give you two examples, and I'll introduce these as motions. Literacy is a critical problem in my district, and also the need for community parks. So we are in the process of developing a park at Laurel Canyon and Fox, right across the street from San Fernando High. In fact, it would be a great place for a farmer's market. I would like to move that that $80,500 in UDAG miscellaneous revenue resources be used for the Laurel Canyon Fox Park Development Project, and also $50,500 in UDAG miscellaneous revenue resources be used to fund the North Valley Caring Services Family Literacy Project in North Hills, a little pocket of poverty, severe poverty, and high drug activity and crime, the highest in I believe, the San Fernando Valley. And this church, it's actually a nonprofit associated with the church. They're doing some great work on family literacy, and so I would make those as motions. And
as we move forward, in the agenda today, we will address that, Mr. Alarcon. We've been joined by Ms. Perry, but I think, or at least how Mr. Reyes, his question has really made me think. As we are dealing with the financial situation that the city's in, and we say all the time we've got to be creative, but this is an area where I believe there are partners on the outside that would want to help sponsor this. What I think we would make sense to me is that we would do this for the 1 year. And then we would have discussions with entities like Kaiser Permanente. I could see the possibility of Kaiser donating that because they don't do political things, but they do community things. It's a matter of us thinking a little outside the box. I think that there are endless opportunities where people, health advocates, would want to support something that's meaningful, and this is not a ton of money. And if we can make these partnerships, then the limited funds that we have, we can use them for literacy programs and things of that nature. Mr. Reyes, and then I think Mr. Cardenas.
Mr. Chair, I think there's a very pivotal point here I want to put on the table that might allow us to avoid using UDAG altogether, in that Mr. Smith, through the CLA, made it a reference to funding we've already provided last fall to address that need. And it's a fund that we each have in every council office to pay for those permits. And so, Mr. Smith, in that policy, we could pay for the necessary permit fees now.
Correct.
So we don't need to use UDAG.
Correct.
So why don't we do that, Mr. Chair? I mean, it just avoids, it means we can move UDAG funds to all the other high priority issues we have in our respective districts, and we have the funding to fill that gap, so we won't need the UDAG.
To put all the chips on the table, Ms. Daniels and Mr. Franks and others and have suggested that there may be other costs that are beyond what we have initially said is about $3,500 per farmer's market. There may be additional costs. They are also concerned that the subsidy money is up to 100% of those permit fees, and it's at the discretion of each council office. So there were two concerns of theirs, that there would be maybe other fees associated with the permitting of a farmer's market above what we initially thought was with the estimates. And then again, it is a program. The subsidy is a program. It's a voluntary, it's at the discretion of the council office to provide that subsidy. This is how it works. You would receive a request from a farmer's market for the subsidy, 100% of whatever it costs for city permits. And the permit is received through an application to the Bureau of Street Services. The Bureau of Street Services then solicits those other city departments for their costs. But we have a standard plan, and that standard plan is really pretty much established what those costs are going to be. The one I think is outstanding right now, and we don't have a handle on, is DOT. DOT may be beyond the $2,000 that they have already estimated it would be the cost for the annual fee. So when the sponsor gets the estimate from BOSS, they write a letter to you or to
And that's Bureau of Street Services
for the subsidy. We review it. It goes to the city clerk, and they...
Mr. Chair, there's nothing to stop this committee from modifying the motion to allocate the money by the special accounts and send it to council, and let those council members that don't want to participate pull their item out, amend it on the floor. We could institute the motion right here to divvy up the money by council district, special events money, and if those council members don't want to participate in the farmers market program, that's their decision.
But see, now, it's my understanding that a percentage of the money has already been deposited into the individual council members' accounts, or our office accounts, and that the request here would be to have some additional money in DOT or whatever, just in case additional funds, or am I wrong?
No, I don't want to speak for them.
Well, Mr. Franks, do you want to...
My understanding is that there are, while the estimates are right now estimates, they were of the opinion that those may be higher, and there may be additional monies necessary to assist the farmers market in that permitting process.
Well, hold tight. What we want to do is, we have two items that we really have to vote on, and I want to make sure we get to those before we have to go to council. So let's just, if you can be direct.
So we're hoping to take a little bit of a citywide approach to it. So right now, a number of the council special funds are exhausted or almost exhausted. The application from CLA, so they actually have a very solid farmers market in Hollywood, and they don't allow farmers to come in to the Hollywood market unless they provide two other locations that are actually not financially viable for the farmers. So they're going to open up the Canoga Park Farmers Market, for example, by saying you can come to the Hollywood Farmers Market, but you have to also come to these other markets as part of how you operate in the city of Los Angeles. So the Canoga Park, there's an application in for a fee waiver, but that actually has been rejected by that council office. We would like to, if we can. Huh? Yeah, there are some that will, there are some that won't, but it's what we're looking at is a way to get past the period where we will have some certainty about what the actual fees are, because as great a job as everybody's done, we haven't yet applied the fees. And as soon as we do, then we'll have a better sense, but we have a pretty high certainty that it will be significant, and in some of our markets, it'll be essential for those fees to be waived in order for those markets to stay open. So we're just looking for a way to get past this period. We're hoping that people would see this 75,000 as an important enough buffer to help us.
But let's be clear, the 75,000 is for 2 years.
2 years.
So it's not a request for $75,000 for this year.
That's correct.
So what I think, in order that maybe we should do the 1 year, and then then you'll know what the cost and if it's above or what you really need. Because see, now I support this, so I'm going to work with you to try to create a way where we can keep these open. And I do believe that it's the responsibility of this committee to do something that's citywide. So I'm a supporter there. But I do think we should take this year, find out exactly what those costs are, look at ways to get individuals to partner with us so we don't have to pay anything. And because I truly believe that it is not easy, but not impossible for us to get somebody that's going to say, I want to sponsor the citywide, what have you, and the cost of them is under 40 grand. There has to be. And so I just think we have to find that person. And what I'd like to do is keep the farmer markets afloat until we can refine this.
I would second that, Mr. Chair.
That's what
I would second that only because it really allows us to put everything on the table. It makes it transparent. It allows us to look at every other pocket strategy so that we can really leverage those precious UDAG dollars, because they are very precious.
So I would ask that maybe we would come back if we find out that the fees are substantially more, so we don't have we haven't nailed down Department of Transportation in terms of the signage fees. They've never required signage before, but now they're looking to do that in this environment, so we don't know exactly the environment we're in yet.
And I get that, Mr. Cardenas has joined us, and he'd like to ask a few questions. Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Cardenas.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have any questions for you, Larry, today. But one of the things about poor communities, and you're talking about UDAG money, we ought to be putting money into swap meets, because I see more poor people at swap meets than I do at farmers markets. Now, it's to be debated as to whether or not they're going to get better products at a farmers market or a swap meet. But I'm not going to make it as a motion, but I'm going to comment that if we really want to help poor people and we want to help farmers markets, maybe instead of subsidizing the fees, we should give money to farmers markets so they can reach out to poor people and tell them about farmers markets, so that poor people will actually start to understand and learn how good the products are there. And then if they're not charging too much, like I think they're kind of expensive, maybe poor people will figure out a way to buy better products with more money that they don't have, but at least they can go and be aware. And one of the biggest problems with society is education, education, education. It's not so much that people are dumb. We just don't educate them enough or afford them enough opportunities or remind them enough about what wonderful things are out there. So maybe, I really don't care if that $75,000 goes to farmers markets, but what I do care about is that we try, even though this money, because it's been reprogrammed and reprogrammed and reprogrammed, that it seems like the source of these funds don't care whether or not we use it for the poorest communities like they intended us to use it for in the beginning. I want to make a motion that I see a delineation in some of my notes about the CDD requests, the $75,000 for the farmers markets, the Devonshire PALS program, $100,000 in CD12, National Council of Jewish Women, $65,000 for security cameras, audit fees for CDD, $1,000, and CDBG 10-11 shortfall, $250,000. I want to make a motion to adjust the audit fees from $100,000 line item to $60,000 line item, and the CDBG shortfall from $250,000 to $150,000 line item to free up money so I can get money to my poor district and program $40,000 for programs at communities in schools, $40,000 for programs at Casa Esperanza, which is on Bly Street. Bly Street was the first gang injunction in the entire city, Bly Street was, and it still has a lot of issues. There was a park built on Bly Street on millions of dollars that I was able to garner when I was in the state legislature, and also when I was a councilman. We bought the properties next door and made a park, and the community was kind enough to name it after Andres and Maria Cardenas. And my motion is that we move $50,000 for security cameras and program at Cardenas Park. And
What's the name of the park?
Cardenas Park, after my mom and dad. They're not around, but the park is here. Sherman Way tunnel security cameras, I started with the community, pitched in with my office and the neighborhood council. We got some security cameras, but we need to upgrade them. So $25,000 in my motion for the Sherman Way tunnel security cameras. So a total of $25,000, $50,000, $40,000, and $40,000. Y'all can do whatever you want with what's left over.
Okay, now, my, initially, I have no problem with that, but it is just not my manner to have all of these things given to me in 10 minutes and for me to pass them. So I'm not saying that I have a problem with it, but I do want to vet it. So I think that we're going to have to continue this and then have your staffs communicate with mine. Quite possibly, had I known about this before, I could have sifted through it in my head and been prepared to move forward with it today. It's just, see, I'm getting old and surprises. No, tremendously. But I think that Mr. Reyes has started something that I want to make sure that we properly complete.
Right, and I agree with you. There is a process here. I respect Councilor Cardenas's advocacy for his district, and I understand it. I think each one of us goes through that every once in a while because we see what's happening around the city, so I appreciate that. But I also know that I respect the chair discretion in looking at how we address these requests, understanding there's a lot of work that was taken to get to this point in committee. And so how we balance that out, I think, should be vetted out. And so if we do continue this, I think it'll make a much healthier discourse. Otherwise, I think we could degrade into a grab bag mentality, then we'll get nowhere fast. And then that, I think, will hurt our respective constituents throughout our district. So I appreciate the approach.
Yeah, and I do want to afford Mr. Weezer as a representative that's here or was here.
He had to leave. Eric Sanjurjo? He had to leave.
That should come forward. I have a card from Eric. Okay, well, I don't see Mr. Weezer's representative. So, Mr. City Attorney, let me ask you this. I think we should continue this. Let our staffs communicate and see if we can't work out something that everybody is comfortable with. It doesn't appear to be too challenging. I think we could do that.
I agree with you, sir. I'm not sure if all of the motions that Mr. Cardenas made, whether or not those are actually items that are already before the committee based upon these 3 agenda items.
Okay, you know what?
Well, you're right. There were so many things. I wasn't sure if they fall within the scope of the 3 agenda items.
And
Okay.
I'm sorry to ask, but were you able, I thought there was a motion and a second on item 5 that's separate? I just want to make sure I understand.
Well, when we finish with this,
Okay.
you will understand.
Oh, good, thank you.
So, I'm going to suggest to the members that we move forward with item 6 and items 12.
7.
Where do I see a 12? No, CD 12, that's what I'm saying. Item 6 and item 12. Item 7. I am confused. 6 and 7, Mr. City Attorney.
Yes.
And we will continue item 5 and attach to that, I guess we have to have a motion that will direct them to, instead of for the 2 years, we do the 1 year, and then direct them to creatively come up with ways that we can reduce the city's financial, input or support by trying to partner with the outside or private sector. Things like looking at moving, if it's possible, moving some of the farmers markets to large parking lot areas where we don't have the cost of. So how would we structure that?
Wait a minute, item 7 is totally different from item 6.
Item 7 is the PALS program, is it?
Yes, the PALS program.
And item 6 is the Jewish Women's Center, National Council of Jewish Women.
Okay. So in fact, so what we'll do, on item 5, we will just continue it, and we'll work out the language the next time that we meet. I'd like to move on 6 and 7.
I'll second 6 and 7 since they're the poorest districts in Los Angeles.
And Items,
District 5 and District 12.
Yeah, well, see, though, the the Jewish, the National Council of Jewish Women, though, I mean, this organization does a lot even in my district, even though they're not housed there. We might think, I think we do have a responsibility to fund programs that might be headquartered in more affluent areas, just based on the services they provide. And it's my understanding that the PAL program, that this is for at-risk youth to participate in the PAL program. So I don't have a problem with
I
that.
don't either, that's why I seconded it.
So Mr. Cardenas is second, so we're going to move those. All righty then. We're going to have to take the mic away. It's one of those districts in the olden days you could get arrested for being colored at noon or something, yeah.
They consider any kid.
I got you. Calm down, Miss Fair.
Slow down.
If we got 25 minutes to talk, let's just keep talking.
No, there was a time, and we can all relate to that.
I know, I sound like daddy.
There was a time when just driving down the wrong street.
Ed Vincent got thrown out of Inglewood when he was on the Rams football team, and then became a mayor of Inglewood.
No, what happened?
Sometime later.
No, exactly what happened. Ed Vincent was here to play in the old college all-stars versus the pros. And he was headed to the beach, and they didn't know where they were going. And it was in Inglewood where they were stopped by the police, turned around, and then later, to hear Mr. Vincent tell the story, when he became mayor, he did terminate the police officer that
But he did come to Los Angeles and play for the Rams.
Yeah, he did.
Between those two events.
So, if there are no problems, we will adopt the motions on items 6 and 7, and we will continue item 5. Ms. Sauer, is there any more business before this committee?
No.
Then this committee is adjourned.